Hi, I'm Jacob Stein, and I am an asset protection attorney. I'm a partner at Aliant's Los Angeles office, and I have been practicing asset protection planning for about 25 years, representing all sorts of clients facing lawsuits, creditor claims, investigations by government agencies, and the like. And in this quick video, I would like to explain the difference between domestic asset protection planning and offshore asset protection planning, and when do you use and which one. So first of all, in using domestic versus offshore, we look first and foremost at what are the assets you're looking to protect. If you're looking to protect real estate, there is no reason to use an offshore structure. If you have real estate in the United States, no matter what sort of structure you place this real estate into, a U.S. judge will always have jurisdiction over that real estate. He can just ignore the structure you've set up if he believes that the right thing to do is to transfer title of your real estate to your plaintiff, for example. So in our practice, we only use offshore structures for assets that can be moved overseas. So usually these are liquid assets, for example, money in the bank or brokerage accounts. Sometimes it can be intellectual property. Sometimes it can be artwork. So we do have, for example, clients who move physical artwork out of the United States to protect it. But the first distinction is what sort of an asset is it, right? And an offshore structure should not be used for assets that will always be subject to the jurisdiction of a U.S. court. So never for real estate, usually not for U.S.-based businesses, and not many other types of U.S. assets. Again, unless the asset can be easily moved outside of the United States, either today or in the future. The other distinction between domestic and offshore is the level of protection we are getting. So for example, an often used structure in asset protection is a trust, right? If we set up a trust in the United States, that trust will be governed by the laws of one of the states in the United States. If we set up a trust outside of the United States, now we're selecting a foreign jurisdiction, and the laws of this jurisdiction will apply to a trust. So there are foreign jurisdictions that have modified their trust laws to make them very debtor-friendly. So if you're going to be sued, you want the laws of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, right? Not the laws of New York State, for example, to apply to your trust. And then in addition to the governing law, again, offshore usually very favorable, we are selecting a trustee to be the trustee of this trust, and this trustee is now outside of the United States, right? So every trust must have a trustee, and if your trust is situated somewhere in the United States, the trustee is usually also in the United States, which means the U.S. court has jurisdiction over the trustee. And if we are setting up an offshore trust, the trustee of this trust is going to be outside of the United States. And it means that a U.S. court has no jurisdiction, no personal jurisdiction over the trustee, so the court cannot compel the trustee to do something. And the same logic will apply if you have, let's say, a trust protector with an offshore structure. We will position the trust protector outside of the United States. If we are setting up something simpler like a limited liability company or a corporation overseas, maybe the directors or the officers of this entity, the registered agent, all of that is outside of the United States. And you can continue to apply this logic to all sorts of other structures. So again, so the major advantages of an offshore structure versus the U.S. is that with an offshore structure, we gain access to much more debtor-friendly laws, right? So there are jurisdictions that specialize in having debtors set up structures in those jurisdictions. So St. Vincent, Nevis, maybe Cook Islands, a few others come to mind. And then the administrators of that structure, like trustees, managers, trust protectors, can also be outside of the United States. So those are the biggest differences between offshore and domestic structures. Hope you have enjoyed this video. I'm Jacob Stein, and I'll see you next time.